Hello there and welcome everybody. BLS016 Show and Tell with CHAU TRAN. And today we're going to talk about the component store. Hello, CHAU.
Hey.
Hey, nice to have you here. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So last Friday on BLS15, CHAU and I took shots at a dual coding, I won't say competition because we weren't competing, but a peer programming session where I started out implementing a to-do list using Component Store, and later CHAU implemented a very similar workflow list, and we looked at some of the differences. CHAU showed me some tricks. I think I implemented some of these. The app is available on my GitHub, github.com/beeman/component store, and I want to quickly run you over the app and show some of the new things that are there. So the app you can see right here, I'll zoom up the screen a little bit. Before we had to-dos and workflows, which is like you can see here, it's a simple to-do list. I got a bunch of demo to-dos, but you can say add a new one. And this will appear here, and you can obviously delete them and get rid of them. And the same thing goes for workflows. And the UI is changed a little bit. It's a bit prettier, I think. But the idea is still the same. You can create an item, and you can then open the item and interact with them. Now, this interface is what CHAU's going to convert into using a component store and basically a recursive system, because as you can see, we have like one top-level group, and inside there we have other groups, and each group can have multiple groups or conditions. Yeah, so that's for the thing we're looking at today. And one of the things I want to show you folks is this Formally integration that I built. So for those of you that follow me, it's probably not a secret that I'm a big fan of Formally. I use it in every Angular project. I think it's the only right way to do forms in Angular. I think otherwise you're making your life more difficult. And in order to prove this point, I basically started working on the integration for Tailwind. So these forms that you can see here are styled by Tailwind and provided by Formally. And it makes it super easy to make highly advanced and interactive forms. Basically stuff you would work on for weeks normally, or days at least, is something you can basically just enable with Formally. Like here, you can do advanced layout, which are also like responsive. So this uses the Tailwind grid system. So if we go to a mobile layout, you see that it all flows into a single row. And here it uses the CSS grid abstraction by Tailwind. And then lastly, a super simple login form. This is basically your hello world of Formally forms, where you just render it out. And to give you a brief look on how this works, you can obviously look at the source code, but if you see the forms demo, then this is actually all rendered by the same component, so we don't need any additional templating to render our forms. The only thing we do is add a list of fields. I'm going to wait a second till my syntax highlighting catches up here. I'm not sure why it's... Oh, there you go. So the only thing that we're looking at here to render the form is actually this UI form element. So this means that as you grow your form, you don't need to add more templates. And this is what I think is very, very much the strong suit of Formally. But then where do we define those templates? Well, you do define those globally. I have them here in UI, form, and let's open the form type input, which is one of the most simple ones. And here you can see, okay, in input, it's just a wrapper around the custom input. And here we can see where we add the Tailwind classes. So yeah, give it a look if you're interested in doing forms in Angular. I think it's a pretty interesting way to look at it. And lastly, I'm going to show how I built these demos. So let's take a look at the login form, which is basically the hello world. This is what you have for form input. So you merely just define the form, and if you want to pass in another field, let's say first name, you can add it here. Probably want to have a label for first name. So let's say label first name, and then if we go back to our app, then here you go, it renders out the first name field. So adding more fields doesn't cause more templating, and this is what I think is it's one of the benefits. So yeah, Chau and I talked about adding some more advanced demos here. If you have any ideas what you'd like to see implemented, feel free to give us a ping at the chat or in the Angular Discord. We're both pretty active there, so you can reach us there or on Twitter. My Twitter is BEEMAN_NL, and Chau's Twitter is Nartzy1410. So definitely give him a follow as well. And with that, I think, Chau, we can move the camera, move the screen to your machine.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So we can take a look at the implementation of the workflow builder. There we go. Screen is coming up right now. And there we see WebStorm. Yep, with the larger font.
All right.
Awesome.
So let me go to the workflows. I want to add one real quick. Test. And there we go.
So I think one of the things that might be interesting is that in the previous one, we were using Firestore as a backend. So we would see the same data, but we changed this and now we're using IndexedDB on your local machine. So any data that you see in this app is being stored in your local browser, which makes it easier for debugging. And this makes sure we'll never run into limits that we overuse Firebase. But that's a small A side. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yep. So I'm going to give a little bit of like analysis here. So what I'm going to do. And just so you know, unlike last time, this time I actually prepared some code before. I tried to implement the what I'm going to implement here, so that I have my steps clear and detailed. So as you can see, as Beeman said, we have a nested group here. I mean, a nested structure is that inside a group, you can have a group or a condition. So it's nested and it's recursive. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some input like max depth to this whole tree. So you can only go as far as the max depth allows you to. So this one is like 4. So you can go up to 4 group. And at this point inside of this group, because it's at the max depth, I will not allow you to add more group. So but that's
you do add more conditions there. So basically
you can add more condition, but you cannot add more group if that group is already at the max depth.
Right. And that's do you then disable the button?
I hide it.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Perfect.
Yep. And another thing is I'm going to start render something here. I was thinking that for a condition, I will render a checkbox to say allow delete this condition. Is a silly checkbox, but if that checkbox is false, you cannot delete this condition. If that checkbox is true, then you can delete the condition.
Cool. Okay. Adding checkbox should be fairly simple with the integration. So we might take a look at doing that.
Yep.
Very cool.
And the next thing is delete. So if you delete a condition, then it just delete a condition. If you delete a group, then it will delete everything inside that group. Right. So that's the first thing. That's another thing. So I'm gonna start now. All right. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to change the model a little bit. So right now we only have one model for workflow item. I'm going to create a model called workflow condition and a workflow group. And then the workflow group will have a list of children. It's going to extend the workflow item. And the type will be a read-only type, and it will be just a group. So if you create a new workflow group, you cannot make that the type of workflow condition. Same things over here. I have a workflow item extended. The type will be read-only type of workflow type condition. and I will have a value of Boolean. So this will be the value that we put on the checkbox.
Right. So the difference is that the workflow group only can have children, and the workflow condition only can have a value, and this is never a cross-section between the two.
Yep. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have to fix one place, is that in the list store, this one right here, when I add a new workflow, I initialize with a new group. So I'm going to change this to workflow group.
Yep.
Instead of workflow item. And let's see if yeah, everything just works because we just change it, the interface. All right, now I think, there we go. So of course, it's gonna break a lot of things because in the workflow details, we are using the workflow item right here. We pass in the workflow item.
Yep.
Now the first thing I'm going to do is this is the workflow detail. In the workflow detail, we actually grab the workflow ID, and we're trying to fetch the workflow from the route rem. We're going to bring everything of this inside of the workflow detail store, and that is the workflow detail store.ts. And we're going to create a store that going into. All right, so my workflow detail store will be the source of truth for everything that's going to get rendered here. It will manage the list of groups, the list of conditions, the max depth. Then we're going to have, for each group, we're going to have a workflow group store, and the workflow group store actually just store the information it needs to render. It will not update or do anything on that group except for the collapse state. So the collapse state is actually the responsibility of the group. It doesn't have to do anything with the whole tree. So we're going to put the collapse state on the group.
Yeah. There's another property that we store on this item, or we just store it locally in the workflow?
We will store locally in the workflow group store.
Very good. Very good.
So now we have the workflow detail state, and in this state, of course, that's the saving and the loading. Saving, loading. We have the max depth, right? This is the max depth that I was talking about. This max depth can come from, let's say, where you want to render this condition, or this can come from like a backend call, or you can come from a configuration like an environment file. But for this demo, I'm just going to initialize it as CHAU.
Okay.
Workflow. So that's our workflow. And actually, you know what? I'm going to just do this. Make that optional.
Yeah.
So then I have a group node, and the group node will be a map of string and the workflow. Actually, I forgot to do something else. Let's go back to the I guess the model. So in order for us to work to put the tree structure inside of any kind of state management, it'd be better if we normalize that tree or that data.
Right.
So
for want to keep a flat structure of all the workflow groups and workflow conditions that you have, basically all the workflow items. Yeah. So you can individually address them.
Yep. So I'm gonna create an interface called normalized workflow group, and it's going to extend omit workflow group. It will extend the workflow group without the children, because we're going to make the children ourselves, and the children will be a normalized workflow item. I call it normalized, but workflow item doesn't really have anything to normalize. Actually, let's do this. The children of this will be omit of a workflow item, parent ID. So the children of the normalized workflow will be an array of the ID of the child and what type it is. So that's all the normalized need to know. So even though this is a group, it doesn't have the children. It just know that it is a group, and that's all we need to know. Right. So now this is my normalized workflow group, and we go back to the store. That will be a map of the normalized workflow group, and then we have a condition nodes. Also, it's going to be a map of string, and this is the workflow condition. So let's just put some sample down here. Let's say you have your tree to be ID of 1, and then parent ID. This is the first one, so it doesn't have anything. The type will be group. Then it will have a children. Now inside the children, you will have ID of 2, and then parent ID of 1, type of group, right? And then it has children, and inside it we'll have type 3, parent ID of 2, and it will be the condition. Now this is your normal tree, but to normalize it, you will have the group nodes. It will be 1, a type of group, blah blah blah, with a parent ID, no, and then the children will just be ID of 2, type of group, and then you have your group down here with the type group, parent ID of 1, children will be ID of 3, type of condition, and that's it. Then your condition node will have 3 at the condition value. Yeah. So this is the normalized structure that we can store inside the store.
Good. And I think the big benefit of this is that at any moment you can access an individual item to reference it, to fetch it, or to delete it, items from it.
Yep, and when you access something inside of a map or inside of a dictionary structure, it's very fast. It's constant time. And one more thing, the reason why I use map, because I want to keep the order. So that's when I when I denormalize my normalized back into the tree, I have the order intact.
Yep, very cool.
All right, now I can just use this inside of that. And let's do injectable here. All right, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to inject the service because we're going to fetch the workflow. So it's going to be workflow service. And we're going to inject the route, which is the activated route. Because as I said, we're going to fetch the workflow from the route params.
Yeah.
Before I move on and before I forget, I'm going to use something called Immer. Immer.js. So I'm going to install Immer. So Immer helps me.
Use yarn, please, to not mess up the benefit.
I keep forgetting. Immer. Here we go. So Immer is a library that helps you mutate your data in an immutable way, right? It helps you change or update your data in an immutable way, but keeps the data immutable.
All right. Yeah. So the way I see it, it allows you to still use array.push without doing any violent things.
Correct. I'm gonna show the usage with Immer, and then I'm gonna put in a comment because I have it, the usage without Immer when we want to add condition or when we want to remove condition. It gets very complicated.
Yeah.
Yep. And now we have Immer. I'm going to add a util. This is my mutable reducer, TS. And this mutable reducer is actually a helper function going to be a mutable reducer it takes in the type T and V function. So what it takes in, it will take in a callback. State will be the draft of T. Draft is from Immer, by the way, and the value will be a V, but it is optional. And this one will return me a T or void. So Mutable Reducer, I'm going to show you how we use it later. But basically, when we want to do this dot updater or this dot set state, we can pass in Mutable Reducer.
Right.
All right, this will return. Let's put in this. So it will take in the old state, of course, drop of T, and also the value of V, and this will return T. So this will return old state value, and then we're going to return the produce Immer, and we pass in the callback. Actually, we pass in the old state, and produce, actually old state is type T. This will give me the draft of T, and we want to return the callback of state and value as T.
All right. Okay. So we basically have a mutable reducer, which is a method that returns a method that wraps around Immer.
Yep, basically that.
Yeah.
Now I'll go back to my store. All right. Mutable. First thing first, I'm going to have an effect called initialize effect to initialize the workflow from the route params. So it's going to be initialize effect. This will be an effect, and it's actually tag in the string is the workflow ID. Workflow ID type. And I will switch map workflow ID. This dot service dot this item.
Yep.
Item workflow ID. Yep.
Awesome. And I really, really think this is a very elegant way to do it. You shared it with me in chat, and I implemented it here in the demo service, actually, the demo details page. And it's super elegant because now it's all in the store.
Yep. So I know we have like loading screen. So I'm going to patch the state, set the loading to true.
Very cool. Can you quickly elaborate on patch states, because we didn't use it last time?
Yep. So I just realized that on the component store, in addition to set state, we also have patch state. So set state requires you to pass in a whole function, a whole state, or a function that returns the state. The patch state only allows you to pass in a partial state. So that so you let's say you only pass in, or you want to update one or two state from specific action or specific effect. Without patch state, you're gonna have to use the state function and then do the spread every time. So with the patch state, you don't have to do the spread. You just have to update the partial state.
Very cool. Very useful addition.
Yeah. And then on this one, we will have the workflow. And we're going to, so this is where we're going to, so on the workflow, we have the group. So this group, actually, that needs to change as well. Excuse me. Workflow, this needs to be workflow group. Back to my store. So now on the workflow, we have the group. We're going to use this group to normalize, to have our normalized group nodes and condition nodes. So I'm going to just write a route down here to do this normalize. I pass in workflow.group. And I will return a group nodes and condition nodes.
Right.
And then I will do the patch state, loading back to false. Saving. We don't really deal with saving in this one, right?
Not yet. We can just set it to false here.
Yep. And then the workflow. To the workflow, we'll have a group node and the condition nodes.
Awesome. So here we save everything in the initial loading of the state. I think one small detail in here you go, line 62, set the loading and saving to false in the super.
I still don't like this, so
okay.
So this one we false and saving to false as well.
Yeah. If you don't like it, please don't.
No. I mean, I don't like the way the super takes in the default state as t instead of partial t.
Right. Okay.
So you have passing t. I don't like it.
Okay. You'd like it more if it was the partial.
Yep. That's what. That's if I don't need to make these optional.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a fair point.
So now I have the initialize effect. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Now we can look at the newly achieved trick, at least in my book, to do a super elegant thing with the route and the activated route.
Yep. So when your detail store constructor runs, you actually have access to the route already, and this route is actually what the router passes to the component where we're going to provide this detail store, which is our workflow detail component. So now we have the same instance of that route. We actually can do route.params.pipe, and we're going to block a workflow ID out of it.
Super elegant. And this, so the initialize effect in the other ones, what we did was in the list component, in the ng-init, we would load the items, which is an extra, basically a trigger that says, hey, we want to now start this effect. And here we can pipe it, we can use the trigger that comes from the route. So we don't need an ng-init in our ng-detail that says, hey, go start loading this store. And it will do it. And this is something I think is beautiful.
Yep. And to quickly point out where the workflow ID comes from, it's from the route configuration right here.
Yeah.
That's the workflow ID.
Yeah, awesome.
Yep. Now we need to take care of this normalize function. So it's going to be a normalize function that takes in the group, and it is a workflow group. It will yell because, oh, you have this already, so that's good.
Yeah.
It's return me my group nodes of map string of normalized workflow group and my condition nodes of map string workflow condition. All right, cool. I will just return. Actually, it will take in the group nodes as well because this is going to be a recursion function.
Okay. Yep.
And it will be a new one. Condition nodes, map string workflow completion to be new. That. So you can just return it right here. All right, this one I'm gonna have to look it up because I don't want to mess up.
Yep, this is definitely good to get right.
Yep. So the first thing is I want to check if the group that's being passed in has any parent. If it doesn't have any parent, actually, if it doesn't have any parent, then it is the first group. That's the group of the tree. That's the group of the workflow. So we're just going to run the set on the group nodes. So we want to set the group ID and we will set it to the ID. Parent ID, we will say no. Actually, I can do that. No, let's do undefined. And our pattern, yeah.
It should accept undefined. Yeah, it should just not be defined, and that should be good.
Yep.
Okay.
For the children, now the children on the group nodes, remember it's just a normalized workflow item. So we're going to use the group.children.map. For each child, we're going to return a type of child.type and the ID of child.id.
Right. And alternatively, we initialize it with an empty array. Right. So if we don't have any group children, so
probably type is missing in type workflow type ID. What?
Missing in type workflow type ID string undefined, but required in big workflow item type and ID. Isn't it another exclamation mark behind the type here? The word type?
It should. Let's hold on. Type is missing. It has it there. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? TypeScript.
And if I look at the example, because we have this prepared and we look at this prepared, I see one difference, which is that you have like the double question mark at the end of the line with the array. This
yeah, but it should be. I'm gonna actually just do a quick here workflow type ID string. And that should fix that. No.
And does it have to do with the group.children potentially being undefined? I'm not sure if that's related.
Should be. Child.type. That's exactly what I have here, I believe.
Yeah, it should be.
It's a workflow item. Let's check the normalized workflow group. Yeah, it's the type of workflow type and the ID of string to undefined type. Right here. What? Wrong.
It
doesn't
expect an array. Yeah, we want an
array.
Oh
my gosh.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
My bad.
That happens.
Should be good.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay. It expected an array.
It is an array. Oh no. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That happens to all of us. Okay. Awesome. So if we don't have a parent ID, this is what we do.
Yep. So now we have, let's say we check for the children. If this group has any children, if it does, then we're going to loop over the children. Children. Right. Now we go. I'm going to create a type guard. Let's make a workflow detail helper or TS. I'm actually going to export class here. And I'll call this is group. It will take in the workflow item. and it will assert that it is a group, and we return the type equals workflow.group. Back to my detail, I would do workflow detail helper dot each group I pass in the child. Now in here I will call the group nodes. I will set this child to the group node because it is a group. Child.id, and same thing here, child.id. The parent ID will be the group, which is the parent, and the type would be the group, and the children would be the child.children. App item type item.type ID item.id.
Yeah.
And also I will call normalize again with the child.
Yeah, so this is the recursion of the method that we're working on, and this will do the same thing, but it keeps the history of it keeps a reference of the group nodes and the condition nodes.
Yep. So now if the child is not a group, so it is condition, I'm going to set to the condition node.
Yeah. And here, of course, we don't need any recursion because this is this doesn't have any children.
Type would be that, and value I would default it to false.
Yeah. Can it be? Okay. Is it because we're not interested in this value?
We default it to false.
Okay. Right.
You know what? You're right. So child value child as workflow item. Oh, actually workflow condition value or false. Let's do that. So now this is our recursion.
Yeah, this is probably the most involved piece of code up until now. But so one of the things that I learned while doing NgRx Global Store, working with tree structures, the easiest way is to normalize it as soon as you can, and then in your selector reconstruct the tree.
Yep.
These are generally memoized, so these are not expensive operations. So you can run them once, and as long as your data set doesn't change, it will not need to recompute whatever it does. And I've worked with trees, file system trees, visualized them in NgRx, and if you don't do it the flat way, you're getting headaches very, very soon.
And actually, you know what? I'm going to bring this normalize function to the helper because this actually doesn't have anything to do with the store. So I'm going to bring it over to the helper.
Yep, static method on the helper is always nice and clean. So static normalize, and then we reference it.
And this one, right? And now back to my detail store. This is actually from my workflow detail helper normalize.
Very cool.
Let's try to see if we have the data now. Let's have our selector. As I said, I like to have my selector as individual selector first.
Right, and you group them together.
Yep. So now we have read-only of loading. This.select and start loading. I'm going to skip the saving for now. Read-only workflow. Flow, read-only group nodes, actually max depth. Read-only group nodes, select as our group nodes. Do we have any questions so far?
No questions so far. We have only Orlando saying hello from Monteria, Colombia.
Hello. Yep. So here is another thing. We have max depth already. So this now we have the read-only VM. This select, and to my surprise, the select only have up to 4 parameters
Huh.
as the overload.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep, it is interesting. So now I'm going to group the loading, the max depth, and the workflow into an additional selector called workflow info. And I'll have loading, I will have workflow, and I will have max depth. And loading, workflow, and max depth. Now I'm going to group that with the VM conditionals. And I have workflow info, which will destructor. And I have the group nodes. I don't need the condition node, but I still need to put it in the as part of the VM, so that when it changes, the VM is updated. But we don't really need any information for it to the VM of the workflow detail.
Right. Yeah.
So now I have the max depth, I have the workflow, I have the loading. I'll just put everything here. Loading, max depth. And my root, I have the root would be my group nodes. Root would be the first item of the group node. So I'm going to get the values at the next and get the value as this would be as workflow group, and I just want the ID of it. So this is my VM.
Right. And then it will do the automatic stuff because all the group nodes will still have their children. And so
Correct.
we can render that out. Yeah.
Yep. Now, before we move on, I like to have my selector in here, which is just a two function called get group by ID. This will take in the ID, and it will return the select of this group nodes, and it will get the group nodes get and have the ID. I guess, yeah. And I will also have get condition by ID. So this is something I think I guess missing from the select method.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like updater and effect, we can pass in parameter when we call the selector.
Yeah.
But for select, we don't have that option, so that's why I had to have like a function instead.
Right.
I think the NgRx store has this, right? You can have like parameterized selector.
Yeah.
But I think it's not recommended.
Yep. I think the suggestion there is to keep that selection in state, and then it's just another piece of state.
So it's screaming because it wants to have this below that.
Ah, okay, yeah. Ordering. So cool. Yep. We went ahead and built out the workflow details store, and looks probably good enough to at least start it in, add it into the component, right?
Yep. So now in my component, the first thing first is actually I want to make this unpush, and the providers will be the workflow detail store. We don't need any service or route in here anymore. We just need the workflow detail store. Workflow detail store. Oh, we're gonna work on the save workflow probably last. We don't need saving and loading. Then we have the VM. We just got workflow detail store.vm. We don't need any of these.
It's always fascinating to see the cleanup you can do.
Yep. If VM asynchronous VM. Move that up. Now we don't need that ngF anymore. Now for all the workflow, actually just do VM.workflow for now, And this is VM.workflow. For loading, we have VM.loading. I think I have something different in here. So VM.workflow.group. VM.workflow.group. No,
it's basically pretty much an edge case, I say, because these get initialized with a group.
Yeah. So here we're going to change something to the group, because now we're going to pass the root down to the workflow group. This is the first group in our tree, and it takes in a workflow item at the moment. I'm going to make it take in a group ID instead, and remove that.
Okay, interesting.
I will also remove that back to this one. So this will be group ID. Right. And actually, I will have a input of level. This will be a number. So level will be used to compare to the max depth. So what level of this group is. Because this is the first group, so its level will be 0. Right. Now,
and this can already fix one of the visual issues. It's very minor, but if you go to the first class in the template, the first div, we have ML6, margin left 6. We only want to have ML6 if level is not 0, because right now it already indents. So this is a very small visual thing, but yeah, having level here is great.
All right. Now the first thing is I'm going to create the workflow group store. So now we can start removing all of these for now. And you start seeing like all of these functions will get extremely simplifying.
Yeah. So next to having a workflow for the workflow details and a specific store, we're going to have a specific store that takes care of each of the groups.
Yep.
Which is basically the nested store. And when we talked about this first in chat and you showed me your work project, I was blown away that this is possible. I mean, not that it really surprised me, I just didn't think about it. And I think it's a very, very powerful structure. And yeah.
So now in my workflow group store, I have a workflow group state. That's what I say is collapsed. What is your show children right now? But I call it is collapsed. Yeah. It's going to be Boolean. The level will be that, and also the group ID. So we store the group ID and the level. So when our workflow group component is initialized, we're going to grab the actually on change. We're going to use on changes instead of it on init. And we're going to set the group ID and the level to the state.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. And now we have the read-only is collapsed. Semo.
Selector.
Yep. Read-only level. Group ID. Actually, I like to make sure this is not null, so that my observable is doesn't have that undefined thing.
Yeah, we have this strict mode in this Angular app, and we're basically fighting against strict mode at times.
Yep. Right. So the first thing is I will have a default state of is collapsed to false. The next one is I want to have a set group function. Set group function that would take in the group ID and the level. And this will be void. And this will actually just call the patch state of group ID and level.
Yeah, just a help function.
Yep. Now I can. Now this is the magic. Now you can actually inject the workflow detail store in here.
Yeah, so this is what I think. So instead of this workflow group store, which is, you can see it as it's a store backing a presentational component. So it's it's kind of nice that it doesn't go out to the API, for instance. I think it's still something that holds true, but instead it will call out to its parent store, if you will, which is the workflow detail store, and then from here it can do all fancy stuff like, oh, I want this group to be deleted, even if it's the own group where it's on.
Yep. So now we bring in the workflow detail store. Now we can actually call the get group by ID on that, and we grab the group from the parent instead of trying to pass out the actual group here in the state. We only need the ID, because that's what we're working with the normalized state.
Yeah.
So now I have the group ID. I can actually pipe to switch map and group ID and call workflow detail, and I get group by ID, get group ID. So now that's my group.
Yeah.
I can have my VM. So for the VM, I want to have the level. The level is collapse, the group, right? And I need the max depth. So now you start seeing that having individual selector would help.
All right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right now I have the level, I have the ease collapse, I have the group, and I have the max depth. We don't really render the max depth on the group, but we use the max depth to, let's see, collapse, to say is at max depth, and level will be equal max depth if it is at max depth.
Yeah, this is some of the things you did in the previous episode where we had is loading was not just loading, but also you only want to show the loading if the array is empty.
And I want to say that is this subgroup, because if it is a subgroup, the subgroup is level greater than 0. So its level is greater than 0, so it is a subgroup.
Mm-hmm. And what are we using the subgroup for in the rendering?
I forgot.
Okay, no worries.
I forgot, but we get there.
Yeah.
Level.
I think I see it already. It's if we have a subgroup, we show the delete icon, and we don't show a delete on the top.
Right. Yes, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I want to also have has no children. Is the group dot children dot length, right? Actually it does. Yep. I want to have the next level as well. So level +1. That's my next level. I don't know if I should do this because I have some conditional check in my code. But let's see what breaks.
Yeah, let's see what it breaks.
Right now we had a VM, so we get back to the workflow group. Start with providers, workflow group store, and chain detection will be unpushed.
So here, for those of you that are not aware, we touched on this briefly last time, but you can provide an injectable or service in Angular at various levels. You can provide it in root, which is probably the most common right now. You can provide it in the module, which was the classic way of doing things. And one of the things that we don't often use, you can also provide it on the component level, which means that every time a new instance of this component gets rendered, it also gets a new instance, a unique instance of this store. So we can think, makes it super easy to reason about, because we can think of all of these things like it's just the individual store component with its own, it's the individual component with its own store.
Yep. And this is the reason why we can, where we can actually inject the parent store in the group store. Yeah. So if you go back to the group component, we provide the group store here. But the group component is actually a child of the detail component right here. Yeah. And we provide the workflow detail store here. So when a dependency injection of Angular works, it actually, in the workflow group store, when we say, hey, I want to inject the workflow detail store here, now the dependency injection will start walking up this tree, the injector tree of this guy. It doesn't find it. Now it goes to the component. Oh, I find the detail store there, and I'm going to give you that instance.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. This was mind-blowing, and I really liked it. It also works with routed children, by the way.
Yeah. Now I can do VM, asyncs, svm. Bring that up. Now show children. This would be toggle collapse.
Yeah. So VM dot or
I'm gonna make that function now.
Sorry, you're making a function. Yep.
Yep. Now this one is VM.each collapse. If it is collapse, then that.
Yeah. And I think you have an intent here where you can flip it, and you can say with the intent of WebStorm here, you can do the context menu, and you could say flip the expression, so it's not starting.
Yeah. And that's fine. That's fine. So dot parent ID dot. I think this is the E subgroup one.
Yep.
Right. No, this one you checking. Oh, if this guy has the parent ID, yep. So that is E subgroup. So you can delete node.
Yeah, and this is where I started messing around, and this is exactly why this having a proper solution for this is good, because I was already messing around with deleting items, and I somehow stopped at some point.
Okay. It's collapse. It's collapse.
Yeah.
This one is the has children. Has no children. Has no children. Then I show that. This one is vm.group.children. No, not gonna do that right now.
Now this is now going to happen the other place.
And this one item.id, and the level would be vm.level, actually vm.next level.
Next level, yeah.
That go in here. I'm going to change this to a completion ID. It's a string. Let's remove that part for now, and let's just render condition ID for now.
Very cool.
Now let's back to condition ID. This would be item.id. Now add group, add condition, and you can only add group if you not add next F.
Nice. So another thing that I've seen, because we keep the state of whatever item we're working with in this store, we no longer need to pass along the whole store or its parent or etc. So
correct.
It's a great cleaner way to do it.
Okay, now let's see if it renders. We've done a lot. Let's recap a little bit.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was to change the structure. I mean, not change the structure, but adjust the workflow item model into workflow condition and workflow group. So we have a very clear separation between the workflow type. The workflow condition only has value, but the workflow group can have children.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, workflow item, that's true. Then we add a normalized workflow group, which is exactly like a workflow group, but the children instead of the workflow item, but the children is just an array of ID and type of that child. So we don't worry about the workflow item array here, so that we don't have a recursive, it's flattened.
Yeah.
That's fine. Let's go back here and fix that real quick. That. Oh, can we do that on the template?
Yeah, we should be.
Okay. Yeah.
Another way would be to disable strict modes, but let's.
That's fine. Let's just fix it.
Yeah.
Because workflow can be undefined. Yeah. So I'm going to just workflow. Oh, detail component.
Yeah, detail component line 11.
So let's do that.
Question mark here, right? So, yeah.
Yep, that and that.
Yeah. In the
And we
last
have
one
a
here.
save workflow. Let's do that.
Yeah. So I think in a real life app, if you would build this, you probably have an ngIf around this that if you access a workflow that doesn't load, that you'll show, hey, I can't find this thing, which gets rid of these ones. But it looks like you're clean to go. So let's recap. We split up these ones into group and condition, and we have a normalized workflow group.
Yep. Next one is we import immer, and we have a mutable reducer helper function, which is just wrap around the set state or the updated function of a component store, and use produce from immer. So we have we can use mutable style to update our store in an immutable fashion.
Yeah.
Then we create a workflow detail helper, which contains a bunch of static methods. So to help us with the workflow detail, the first thing is group. So this is a type guard. So we make sure that when this is true, we have the item passed in actually of type workflow group.
Yeah.
For normalize, we actually pass in the workflow group, the group nodes, condition nodes, and we will recursively call this normalize function for each group inside the group, inside the workflow group, so that we end up with a list of group nodes and a list of condition nodes, and then we return it. And the group nodes and the condition nodes is what goes on the workflow detail store. And then we go through, we have an example of the tree, and then the normalized data of that tree right here.
Awesome. And looks like this renders. So might pop it open in the browser.
Let's go. Workflow with test. So it's render, but now we cannot add group or, oh, is this correct?
Cannot read property ID of undefined. So workflow, let's see. So this should be the right one, and you open it up.
Yep.
Okay, cannot read property ID of undefined. Workflow details store. 83. 83 cannot read. Question mark there. There you go. Awesome. Okay. So it renders the workflow, but it cannot add, it cannot remove, because we don't wire up all these conditions.
And we cannot do this also. So let's just do this first. It's the easiest. So it's collapsed.
Yeah. So this will be a, I think we had a toggle method in the group here.
Yep. So toggle collapse right here. So we're going to call a method on the group store. We don't know what it is yet, but we just call toggle collapse.
Yeah.
And
we don't pass in anything.
Yep. And this one is actually a updater. So updater. We don't need anything, just need a trigger. And this trigger. Oh, wait, it is an effect?
Yeah.
Let me double check. No, it is an updater. We need just the state, and we just toggle state.
Right. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I didn't. I think I would implement this as an effect first, and then probably at some point have you come by and realize this is just an updater.
There's an updater. Yep. Now we can actually toggle it.
Yeah, I love it.
So now let's look at the implementation of this. Just that.
Yeah.
So it's super
beautiful.
simple.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
The next one, let's work on the add group. So to add group, when we add a group to this group, we actually are messing with the tree, that we add more information to the tree. So we have to go back all the way back to the workflow detail store, because that's where the source of truth is. We go back to the workflow detail store and we have an add group here. So it will be an effect. Actually, let's put this down here then. But only it will be add group.
You call this effect, right? Add group effect.
Yep, add group effect. And again, this is something that I don't want to mess up. So I'm going to look up what I have here.
So I don't think we have any info passed in. So we just do the trigger, which is with the $ syntax.
You know what? This is actually an updater.
As well.
Yep, this is an updater. I'm on the detail store. It is an updater, and this is where we're going to use our Mutable Reducer.
Okay, very cool.
So this one updater, it takes in a string, and this string is the string of the current group ID. So which is the parent ID. You are correct.
So that means at the place where we call it in our workflow condition component, we're going to parameterize this method, pass in the group that we're currently on. This gets passed to the updater.
Correct. So now in this Mutable Reducer, I hope is jump down, but let's just do this. There we go. Now in here we will have a new group ID equals random ID.
Random ID, yep, generated cute little ID.
And then we have the state, the group nodes. This actually has value, so we just set the new group ID to a new group, which is a new group ID, and the parent ID is the parent ID that we passed in, and the type we workflow type group. Children will be an empty array because this is a new group. Then the next thing is we set we push a new group to the group nodes map, but we have to do one more thing is that we have to get the parent group node and we push this new group ID to its children array.
Okay.
So we have the group nodes, we get the parent ID, and on it we have the children. Then we push, and the ID will be
new group
ID, and the type would be the workflow type.group. And let's see, why is this? The IVs a little bit mess up with the strict, so.
Yeah. And this for immer is concerned.
This is for
the only
immer.
thing we need to do. The only thing we need to do. So we can just mutate the map. We can push to one of the items in the map, and this is it. We don't need to do anything else. We don't need to return something.
Let me do something without immer, just to show. This is also an updater. This is a string. It takes in a slate and a parent ID. And let's say we still have the new group ID. And let's say we grab the parent by going to the group nodes, get the parent ID as workflow group. Now we have to return a new state. We spread the old state, and for the group nodes, we actually have to create a new map from the current map, and then we set twice. So this is the without immer way.
Yeah, so then we would set the parent ID here, and we set, okay, you have a
So
new
this
child.
one is the new group ID here. This is our new group here. And then for this one, we have to set the parent ID. And then we have to spread the parent. And then the children have to spread the parent of children.
And
then we
the
add
new one.
Yep. So that's the without immer. So you see how I want to have immer if you work with this type of structure.
Yeah, very cool. I think in order to keep consistency with your code style on line 125, we want to rename add group to be called add group effect, so we can.
Nope, this is an updater. So
it's now an updater. It's not an effect anymore. I'm looking at the example code.
Yeah, it's just an updater.
Totally right. And then we do want to update where we invoke this, so it passes in the parent ID, because this is something we didn't do.
So now, so now on the detail store, we have an updater, and this is actually set the state on the detail store, which is the shelter truth again. Now in the workflow group store, we will just call this updater with an effect. So now inside of this, we will have a read only, and this is add group effect. This was just an effect with a trigger. And this trigger will get the latest group ID, and it's just going to tap. So we have the group ID, actually, group ID, this workflow detail store dot add group, and we pass in the group ID, and that's it.
Also, so we don't need to pass it in nowhere.
Yep. Now we can call add group effect over here. And from the add group effect, we don't really need to pass in the ID or anything like that, because the group store knows the current ID of this group.
Yeah, I love it. Look at that. This is magic, right?
So now you can have that. Back to this one. Go back to workflows, go to test. Now we can add a group. Oh, so this is one thing I keep forgetting to do. So if you want to work with map and set, you have to call enable map set with immer.
Mm-hmm.
The place that I call it is in the module, or usually it's just in the man.js file or man.ts file. That's fine.
Right.
So now you can actually command group. And you can
awesome. And this works recursively. And then also you can see on the second level group, or the third level group actually, we don't have this add group button anymore. So this
because of the max step. Yep.
Awesome. Cool. So what do you want to do next? Add conditions? Or?
Add condition. Add condition.
Yeah. Oh man, this is coming together so beautifully. I'm
yep.
Really
and
sure
again, keep going.
No, I'm really sure that people are super excited to see the advanced usage of a workflow, of a component store like this.
Yep. Now for add condition, same idea with add group. We add something to our detail store, to the tree. So we have to create an updater or an effect that actually set the state of the detail store. And in this case, is another updater that takes in a string, which is the parent ID. So we're adding a new condition to some group.
Yeah.
And this is parent ID. Now we have a new condition ID, which is the random ID. And again, we set the condition node to this new condition ID. Now you can see the beauty of the map.
Yeah.
Imagine that you have to work with this type of structure, but keep the tree structure.
I think it's a beautiful way of working with this. And it kind of goes, so I always see, when I see .push, I always have a red flag. And I think I need to adjust my opinion about this.
A condition ID, and this is a group condition. So now this is our add condition. Very simple. We create a new condition ID. We set this new condition ID on the condition nodes, and then we push this new condition ID to the group, to the children of the group that we pass in.
Yeah.
So now back to the group store. we just have a read-only and condition effect. And same deal, hype with latest from, there's our group ID. And
choose the parent.
Yep, habit. There's a group ID, workflow detail store, and condition, and we pass in the group ID.
Now, here on line 50 in the tab, I see you destructure an array, 51 actually. You destructure an array and we ignore the first one. Is that what comes back from with latest from?
Yep, with latest from, we'll convert your data into an array, and the first value will be the outer stream.
Ah, okay. Yep.
So this is the value of that trigger, which is nothing.
Yeah, we're not.
I think we can do this.
Oh, yeah. Right. Prettier is happy. TS-lint is happy. ES-lint is happy. I'm happy.
Now on the add condition, again, this is called get condition effect, and that's it.
Yeah, cool. Get rid of this bunch of code. Now, I think, so one of the things I can imagine, if somebody new to this structure comes to an app that's built this way, they'll probably is like, where's all my logic? Because this would be...
Yeah.
Yeah, because these components are super uneventful, if you will. There's nothing happening.
Yeah.
We're basically passing along. And I do really appreciate the reactive nature of this, where we just pop in something up the tree, we change it, and it all renders down, it all bubbles down automatically.
Yep. And you can actually check. So I have let's add another group here. So let's look at this. Workflow condition, workflow group, and workflow group. You can see that I have two groups here.
Yeah.
Right. And now if I add a condition to the second group, the third group should not flash. You can see that it's not flashing because we're only changing this group. That's thanks to the unpush and the reactive programming that we're doing right here with the component store.
Yeah.
Even though we're changing one source of truth.
Yeah. The same source of truth is basically rendering out as of the top level group, right? It's the same store that we're interested in, but this is super specific. No, I love this. I really love this.
So that now you can see that our performance is not hindered.
Yeah. Yeah, and this can go on, and I'm actually working for this demo app for a sample data system. So what I often struggle with when I'm building new apps is having representational sample data and also huge data sets. So what I'm working on is a method that we can say, okay, give me a workflow with like 100 groups and a random amount of items in there, and we should see that this still performs when we trigger operations.
Correct. So you can see that it's right here. So I toggle this one. This one is flashing, but this one is not flashing. So it's very independent.
Yeah, love it. Awesome. So I think there's basically three things what we can do. We can look at deleting nodes. We also can add this render condition. We're in 1.5 hours. So if you're interested, we can do another episode where we look at the rest of implementing this. We also thought about testing. If you're up to it, we can totally do that. We can also move along a bit.
Yeah, I'm fine with trying to go through at least deleting the group right now.
Yeah, let's delete the group, and then we can wrap this up, and then maybe Wednesday or Thursday we can jump on BLS016 where we do the third one in the series.
Yep, this is a complex problem, by the way, so it takes a while.
Yeah. No, but you did a great job also explaining the reasoning why, and I'm really happy again that I learned a ton of stuff. In this case, using immer.
So let's change this to delete group instead. First thing, and I will call this delete group. All right. Again, deleting a group is a little bit complex in a sense that when you delete a group, my bad. Let's say there we go. So when we delete a group, let's say this group E4997.
Yeah.
And just add a couple more conditions. You can see that inside this group we have another group, and two conditions. We want to delete everything from our tree. So you can see that this is another recursion function that we're going to have to write to delete everything if we delete a group.
Yeah.
Now let's start with read only. This will be remove group. And this is something I want to copy again.
Basically, re-implement by example.
Yeah. And as I'm typing, instead of like just copying or having the code, it's easy for me to run my train of thought into explaining why.
Yep. Very good.
State value. So this one, we removing this group ID. So we pass in the group ID for it. We're going to grab the group from the group ID. State.group nodes, get.
You can use the get group by ID helper method here, right?
No, because the get group by ID is actually returning an observable.
Right.
We want to actually get the group.
Yeah.
As this is one in normalized workflow group. Then we will have a delete, a function on our helper, workflow detail helper to delete delete group recursive, and we pass in a state and we will pass in the group. And we're going ahead and actually let's just keep going. So at this point, this function will actually deleting the group itself and deleting all children. But we need to also delete delete this group from the parent.
Yeah. So
we have the parent. Go ahead.
So the recursive group, I think how it works is you want to get the group, get all its children and all the children of that children, delete all those, like basically get rid of the reference, and then lastly get rid of the normalized structure. And this is what you're doing right now.
Right. So we're going to implement this one, but as Bram said, we actually just going to loop over the children of this group. If it is a group, then we call this again. If it's children, if it's a condition, then we're just going to delete it from the condition nodes.
Yeah.
And here, after we finish with the group itself, we actually have to get the parent, and we delete itself from the parent children.
Yeah, basically make a new map of the same.
This is one thing that I don't think mutable way is better. You have to find the index, and then you have to splice. I just want to use filter.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. This is beautiful way to look at it. And as long as you can do it the right way with immer, make sure that you're doing it in an immutable way.
Yep.
That's a great thing.
I'm going to just collapse this function. There we go. Now I have a static delete group recursive, and let's look at that function, which is actually very short. We take in the state. This is our draft state. So it is the workflow details state, which I need to export. Export.
Yeah, and this might cause a recurring.
Yep. And this one is the group, is the normalized workflow group. It's actually just a void. All right, first thing first is we just delete the group ID. That.
Yeah.
So we delete the group itself from the group nodes. Now let's start checking for the children. And we loop over the children. And just say if a child of type condition group, then we will just call this delete group recursive state child as normalized workflow group. Else we just do conditional delete child.id, and that's it. That's the function.
Awesome. Yeah, super simple. I think here it really shows the benefit of using a group instead of, a map instead of what I would normally just probably use an object as a dictionary.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely a benefit where you can just call .delete, and if you need it at some point, .has, for instance.
Yep, correct.
It exists.
This is interesting.
It indicates that it's a recursive function. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know about this one.
Yeah, me neither. And I think line 57, we can use our isGroup method, right? So we can say if this.isGroup.
No, because this one return a workflow group. We want a normalized workflow group.
Ah, you're right. Yep, that's correct.
So now in here, it should just work right here. Now we have the remove group. We can go ahead and have a remove group effect. So this one is just remove effect, because we're going to have the remove condition on the condition itself.
Right.
And again, still same. This with latest form tab. Destructure this to that, and I will call the remove group, pass in the group ID.
Now I see these three effects here are super similar. Let's take a look at that in a second. So we have to hear the remove effect. You can get rid of all the junk there.
Yeah.
And now I see that these three are super similar. What we do is, hey, take the effect, which is the trigger, then with latest from this group ID. And actually the only thing that changes is line 44, 51,
yeah, we can,
58.
Yeah.
You can definitely do something to clean this up, but that's
correct.
Optimization.
Uh-huh. Yep. Now we can just remove all these crap. And that's it. Now this is actually finished on the workflow group. Our group
awesome.
is done.
Awesome. It looks beautiful, man.
Now let's go back to this and add a group, add a condition to this, add a condition to that, add a new group, and let's just add a new group to this one. So now, actually, you know what? Let's go back and have something to confirm that is correct.
Yeah.
So
print it all out.
Yep, I'm gonna just tap. Actually, I don't want to tap there because it's gonna mess up with my type. I'm gonna tap here.
How about just do a pre-tag and render it in the display? Just pre-tag and with the JSON pipe, just render the whole structure so we can take a look at that.
We don't have the whole structure. I don't think so.
Yeah, we don't expose the whole structure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now let's just try. I'm gonna just tap here. Actually, let's just. Actually, let's tap this thing. Actually, just right here is good. Then I'll just console log group nodes.
Yeah.
And I want the completion nodes as well. And completion nodes. That.
So when we then reload, we see it initialize with nothing, and then it starts adding stuff to it.
So now with the first group, in the condition, we don't have any condition, and in a group, that's the first group. And we just add this group. We add group, right, and another group. So now we have 5 groups and 2 conditions. So now if I delete this group right here, it will actually goes back down to 2 groups and 0 condition. The condition is still there, so something we missed something with the condition.
Yeah. Cool, but it's.
But I think it should. Yeah, but I think this is where we should stop.
Yeah. We've been in for 1.5 hours. It's been a super interesting session again. Yep. So part 3, we're gonna do part 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah, I love it. So yeah, we're gonna look at part 3. We're definitely gonna fix deleting these conditions when we delete a group. We're gonna add a condition to this group. So can you quickly hit a plus sign on one of the conditions? So right now it says, but yeah, now it says TBD render condition. So we're gonna make a toggle if we can delete this group, the condition or not. And yeah, that's gonna be one of the things. And then basically whatever we find interesting to work on at that moment. But yeah, cool. I think with that we can wrap up today's session. And thanks so much, CHAU, for being on. It was super nice having you again. And yeah, we'll announce. Just follow us on Twitter, and we'll announce when the next stream will be there. I think something Wednesday or Thursday. We should be able to pop something in. And that's it. Thank you everybody for watching, and I hope to see you at the next one. Bye bye.
Thank you.